I've eaten a lot of raccoon. Yes. The answer is yes. And I've eaten it hunting. I've actually had it served by my mom at the table away from hunting. And I have eaten raccoon. And yes, it's not uncommon at all. I'll tell you something that is one of my favorites is squirrel. And it's wonderful, and my mother could do a great job of it. And we all had our favorite pieces, and my dad and sister, I have one sibling, a sister, and they would fight not fight, but my mom and I, they were just, my sister and I as far as siblings, my mom and I wouldn't even ask for the brain in a squirrel.
Oh, man.
And delicious, seriously.
My dad loves cow
My
brain.
sister always got it, or my dad.
The fight over the brain. Jerry?
Well, good morning, good people. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy. What's up, Joe Boo? I guess we can get rid of, I guess it worked. No Kellen Moore. We can put that in the trash, at least. I didn't have Brian Schottenheimer on the list, but we also got the funky chicken, the crowd favorite here, as we evolve into the madness that is the Dallas Cowboys. I have to say that I got to say it's kind of crazy. I'm a little late getting started this morning. I had a HVAC tech come through to do some maintenance on the unit downstairs, basically to clean the coils. The coils were a little bit fouled, which is reducing the airflow a little bit through the unit, and when you reduce the airflow, you don't get as much heat. Doesn't seem to be a problem until you get the temperatures down below 10 degrees, and it's kind of struggling to keep up. So we got it tuned up and cleaned up and all that. But the thing that was funny about it is he saw my shirt, and he's like, "Oh, you're a Cowboy fan too?" It's like, yeah. You know, we all have that. You're a Cowboy fan? Yeah, bro. He said, "I've given up hope, man." You know, he's like, "I love the Cowboys, but I've just given up hope. I don't expect them to do anything anymore." And I said, well, maybe one of these years we'll be pleasantly surprised. And right now, Cowboy fans, they want their pound of flesh. They literally, we have a mob mentality right now. We want to tar and feather somebody. We're watching with the torches and things. We want to burn down AT&T and Jerry and Stephen Jones. But I'm going to say, I don't feel awful about Brian Schottenheimer. I actually don't feel awful. I look at him. I like the things he's saying, people. Okay? I like the things he's saying. That the way he described running the offense is a lot more modern than what Mike McCarthy did. Now, y'all say, well, he didn't call plays. You know, it's not like he hasn't called plays before. And as a head coach, it's not necessarily what you have to do. That's not your main driver of being a head coach. It is with some, but your main thing is you are overseeing all of the team. You are the guy who's setting the tone for the team. And teams, generally speaking, kind of mirror their coach. You can look at the Lions with Dan Campbell. That fiery, I give no F's spirit. I'm going to knock the hell out of you. That team, that is that team. Mike McCarthy is the more oh shuck kind of guy. And it seemed like, oh shucks, well, we got a penalty. Oh shucks, okay. And we'll have to see what he does with it and see if there is a way that he changes the culture of the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know. But there's a lot of unknowns out there about Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. Were those guys product of Dan Campbell and the tone that he set? Or were they the reason, or the Lions, the reason why they were that good was because of those guys? I don't know. But what I do know is San Francisco has been a lot more successful than us, and they've had coordinators that were thought to be the hot coordinators that both have not done anything in Robert Saleh and Mike McDaniels. I've seen Josh McDaniels be one of the hottest candidates. A lot of you wanted Josh McDaniels to be head coach and to be an utter failure. In fact, I dare say almost everybody, except for Mike Vrabel from the Bill Belichick coaching tree, who's been a hot coordinate, has sucked. It sucked. So how do we know that he can't succeed? The thing that's going to, whether or not he succeeds, is beyond his control. And that is Stephen and Jerry Jones. If they do the same bullshit, then he's destined to fail. It's just a matter of time. Dak will keep him relevant. Dak will keep him in games. But in order for them to step up more and to be able to compete with the better teams, they're going to need some better players. And you can see the importance of two things. Two things, people, as you go through and you blame Dak Prescott. You look at the defensive lines for the Eagles and Kansas City. We ain't had nothing close to that in forever. Maybe 2007 was the closest, but we ain't got nothing like that. And you take a look at the running games. Yeah. Those things are things that we have to have if we're going to be able to compete against the Eagles, the Washingtons, and things like that. We just are. It's not enough just to have a good quarterback. You've seen a lot of good quarterbacks that are on the couch with us because they couldn't compete with the running games and the defensive lines that those two teams had. And it's not a matter of coaching. You got to have those guys. If you don't have those guys, you can be great coaches. You can get them, you can get them to win some games. But when it comes to playing the big boys, you got to have big boy things. Now, here's where I want to play some of this from yesterday. And I want to listen to the answer and listen to the man.
Hey guys, Patrick Walker, DallasCowboys.com. Two questions. The first I'll lead to Shotty. Kind of circling back to what Jerry and Steven both said as far as freshening things up, looking for a change. From a head coach perspective, that's going to key in on the offense. Generally speaking, how do you look to move forward as far as modernizing the offense? You talk about solving for the quarterback. What does that look like under a Schottenheimer era?
Yeah, again, I go back to my days with Pete. I think if you go back and you look at some of the things we did in Seattle, obviously the starting point for me would be things that our players do well. You're always going to start with that. If your system's not flexible enough to do what your players do well, then you're probably in the wrong business. But I'm a big believer in cut splits. I'm a big believer in shifts and motions to distort things. We're going to do a great job of marrying our runs and our passes and make those look the same. I'm proud to say that 2 different times.
Okay, so I'm going to say this, man. I'm sorry to interrupt. See, you heard what he says. He wants to make your passes and runs look the same. And you might be saying, why would you want to do that? Because that's part of the deception of what you're going to do. You don't want people to know what you're trying to do. The best place to be successful in football is be where they ain't. To catch them in a defense that's not suited to the play call you have. And that's one of the reasons why, for me, I love the modern 12 personnel. 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets, 1 running back. Back in the day, that was short yardage because you had basically 2 offensive linemen there as tight ends to help block. But see, that's the kind of play that I believe, or formation you'll see a lot of with Brian Schottenheimer. Because if you've got 2 tight ends that can block as well as catch the football, you can either have 7 blockers and a running back, which is when somebody's got 8 men in the box, you basically have person on person. It means the running back has got to beat 1 guy, and you get a hat on a hat. That's the worst case scenario. But you could also end up having 5 wideouts. You can transition, you can line up at 12 personnel. They look at it, think it's a heavy formation. They end up putting 8 men in the box. All of a sudden, you shift one of the tight ends out wider. You go in motion with the running back out the backfield, empty backfield. I've got 5 guys going against linebackers and defensive ends that can open up the field. That's what he means by deception, and that's one of the things we haven't seen a whole lot of this year.
In my career as a coordinator, we led the league in rushing, and they go hand in hand. The running game and the action passing game go hand in hand. But I would say there's a tempo element that we're excited to mix in, that our players have all shown an affinity for. And let me expand on that a little bit. Why do players like tempo? Well, they like tempo because it allows them to play free. You guys have heard some of the play calls. Dak could rattle off 4 or 5 of them right now. They're pretty long. So when you go fast and you're playing on the ball, these guys, it's a little bit more like pickup basketball, you know. And
getting a rhythm.
Those would probably be the biggest things that I would say from an offensive standpoint.
From a personnel and roster building standpoint, salary cap management as well for Jerry and Steven, you guys talk about learning some hard lessons, especially from 2024, depth issues once you guys were ravaged by injury. Just as far as salary cap management goes, free agency and the like, looking in the mirror is one way that you can learn things. Another way is to look at what your opponents and enemies are doing and try to kind of take from their strategies. When you look at a team like the Eagles, for example, do you feel there's anything that you guys can kind of take from their strategies, seeing as they handle free agency a certain way and they're back in the Super Bowl this year, that kind of could work for the Cowboys going forward?
Yeah, I think you certainly look at that. I think you look at your competitors in your conference, what it's going to take to have success, whether that's a 49er team or whether that's an Eagle team. Obviously, the 49ers, had the injury bug situation, and in this salary cap era, if that injury bug hits you hard enough, it can be difficult to overcome. And but at the same time, that's the goal, is to really do a good job with your draft, college free agency. That should be where your strong depth is. Obviously, this year we were counting on playing those guys right away, and they had to jump right in. And as the injuries came, more and more had to jump in. And but I think the bigger thing here is just where can we, which has been our goal in the past, where can we, in free agency, take care of some core needs so that when the draft comes, you are able.
All right, I want to stop there for a second, because you hear what he says. Ideally, you want to take care of the draft and college free agency, and that meaning that is undrafted free agents, guys that teams didn't think were worthy of a draft pick. And they've done good with that. But the problem has always been that's not enough. My brother from another mother, the man, nothing but the best, Law Nation, said it perfect, that the Cowboys never draft to complement. They always draft to fill. And that goes back to them constantly letting go players that are good players, or re-signing ones that are the wrong guys that are injured. And those are mistakes that we can't make. We wasted 2 fourth-round draft picks. 2. And Jonathan Mingo, unless he all of a sudden turns around, but I'm not going to say 5 receptions for 42 yards was a good way to spend a 4th-round pick. And Trey Lance. We spent a 4th-round pick for him and paid him good money. They might have been better off spending that 4th-round pick on a quarterback in the draft, or better yet, a running back, because that's where the running backs were. And so at least he's kind of saying, and I'll back it up a little bit again.
Which has been our goal in the past. Where can we, in free agency, take care of some core needs so that when the draft comes, you are able to take the best player on the board, not unlike we did with CD. We weren't necessarily in that draft looking for a receiver.
So here's the thing. So let's think about this for a second. Let's think about and maybe I'm reaching. Okay, I'm trying to get hope here. I understand. I'm trying to get some hope. Don't destroy my dreams. But he talked about taking care of some of your core needs in free agency before the draft. Typically, the Cowboys will sign a few of their guys in free agency, but they're not signing anything big. They're not signing anything. They're not really taking care of core needs. We've gone through to training camp where we have no experience at linebacker other than Leighton Vander Esch, and we signed a veteran in free agency like Anthony Barr coming off an ACL. We ended up going through and trading. I believe I was at the Rams game, preseason game, for Jonathan Phillips at the end of training camp. We ended up signing Lawson after training camp. So here he's saying, ideally, you'd like to take care of these things before the draft, which is the end of April, which would be dealing in free agency normally when they don't. Again, I'm reaching.
But C.D. Lamb's sitting there, and it's obvious what you do there. And I think if you do some things in free agency, like we've done in the past, to really take care of your roster before the draft comes around, you have a much better chance. But certainly, you look at the blueprints. Everybody does it different. Kansas City's doing a great job bringing young guys along, and those type of things. And like a team like Philadelphia, you certainly look at the way they're doing it, where they went out and, did some things with some veteran players. You have to take a look at that. And then you got to find exactly what fits your core, your DNA with our players and what we have and what gives us the best chance to compete against. Certainly you start with your division, the Eagles, the Commanders, and the Giants. And then you stretch that out, and what does it take to beat the 49ers, to beat the Rams? Certainly those are all things that come in.
So far, you haven't
I'll
done
answer
that.
this. It's money management. Cap is financial. When I bought the Cowboys,
I can't. I'm sorry. I can't, Jerry. I don't want to hear about you driving a dirty Bronco. I don't want to hear about that. Okay? Not when you got a 330-foot long yacht, 2 helicopters, and all this. I don't want to hear about your dirty Bronco. Okay? Sink or swim, it's all dependent on Jerry and Stephen Jones. Now, we know that the Cowboys are nearing deals with Matt Eberflus. That looks like he's going to end up being the defensive coordinator. And Nick Sorensen, I'm hearing, of course, from 49er fans, they're actually commenting and basically laughing at us because they're saying that Nick Sorensen was a failure, that he's a bum, he stinks, and so on. But he was defensive coordinator. We didn't hire him as defensive coordinator. We hired him for special teams. So he was a good special teams coordinator, good enough to be elevated to defensive coordinator. So we'll see how that works out. And the thing I will say, at least, is the Cowboys coaching staff, where we've gone from Mike McCarthy at 61. Can't believe he's only 61. He's only 2 years older than me. He looks a lot older than that. And Mike Zimmer, who's 68, to a 51-year-old head coach, and Brian Schottenheimer, as well as these other guys that are younger. So maybe these guys will relate better to the players. We'll finish this off with big risks that Jerry Jones talks about here.
Time to be introduced to Brian Schottenheimer. Now, we've been waiting for this move to be made. It seemed like this was the direction Dallas was leaning, and sure enough, Schottenheimer is Jerry Jones' choice. So Todd Archer covers the Cowboys. He was in the room today, a very interesting press conference. We've already heard some of it. Todd, you caught up with Schottenheimer after he was introduced. What did he have to say?
Yeah, Laura, I think you'll like this. When he was at Florida playing quarterback, he kept a card in his wallet, said that one day he'll be the head coach. He'll be the youngest head coach in NFL history. Well, he's now 51 and 25 years in experience as an assistant coach. He's getting his first chance, 10th coach of the Cowboys, 9th son to join his dad as a head coach in the NFL. And while Marty Schottenheimer was not able to get to a Super Bowl, Brian Schottenheimer said he believes the Cowboys can get there quickly.
The objective and the main thing is we want to win a Super Bowl. And my dad always talked about that. He said, well, why would you have any other goals? It should be about winning the Super Bowl. And only one team does it, but that doesn't mean you don't strive for that. And I think one of the things about me taking over this prestigious position is we can hit the ground running pretty fast because I don't need to learn the decision makers. I don't need to learn the quarterback. I don't need to learn how things work. And so I feel like we're kind of ahead of the curve with some of these other teams that made changes.
It's Brian Schottenheimer, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Brian, thanks.
Thanks.
Yep.
Well, Laura, you look at Brian Schottenheimer where he is now. He will not be going to Mobile for the Senior Bowl this week with Jerry and Stephen Jones. He's got some work to do in his coaching staff. Look for a defensive coordinator to be Matt Eberflus, the former Bears head coach, a 7-year assistant under Jason Garrett with the Cowboys, slowly but surely filling in those holes here on that here on that coaching staff. A lot of work to do. He feels it's better to be here than in Mobile looking at college prospects.
Oh, that makes sense. We'll keep an eye on the Eberflus information. Great stuff from you, Todd. Now, more from Schottenheimer and owner Jerry Jones during their availability today. You don't want to turn this off, okay?
The starting point for me would be things that our players do well. You're always going to start with that. If your system's not flexible enough to do what your players do well, then you're probably in the wrong business. But I'm a big believer in cut splits. I'm a big believer in shifts and motions to distort things. We're going to do a great job of marrying our runs and our passes and make those look the same. I'm proud to say that 2 different times in my career as a coordinator, we led the league in rushing.
If you don't think I can't operate out of my comfort zone, you're so wrong. It's unbelievable. This is as big a risk as you could take. As big a risk as you could take. No head coaching experience. I think this might make something special. So I'm all behind what we're, to say the very least, Clarence, for your benefit, I'm all in here.
I mean, it's just wild watching Jerry kind of land the plane there and Schottenheimer sitting right next to him like this is the biggest risk. Okay, what do you make of the hire?
Did Ryan Poles say that was the biggest risk?
He did not.
Did Woody say it was the biggest risk?
He did not.
Are those guys first-time head coaches?
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah, but it's first-time head coaches that they believe in, that they think has earned these jobs, and also that other teams thought earned the job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Shay Sharp said it this morning, right? Like, are you shooting your shot at the person ain't nobody else shooting they shot at?
Yeah.
Not if you really want, not if you want a good one, right? You're not going, hey man, you know what? That's low-hanging fruit over there. I'm gonna go grab that one.
No.
That's not the way it works. And when you look at what the Dallas Cowboys have done since Jerry Jones has said he was all in, he's been all out.
Yeah.
All out on getting the best players, all out on at least searching and vetting the best coaching candidates. And if you are a coach, would you want to go to this place that roster seems pretty strapped and that you know the owner and GM is going to have a huge say on what goes on?
Yeah, the risk is not that Brian Schottenheimer hasn't been a head coach. See that all the time with head coaches. The risk is that he's been a part of this offense, and the offense, I think we all agree, hit a wall before Dak Prescott got injured this season. Now, it should be noted, Mike McCarthy was the play caller the last couple of years. So I do think Brian Schottenheimer has an opportunity here to prove that he has evolved as a play caller. And I will say, there was a period with Seattle where that offense was incredibly explosive. But then that offense also hit a wall with Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And I think that is my concern here is, does he have that ability to adapt over the course of the season. He talks about wanting to run the football. What happens when you can't easily run the football because the offensive line maybe isn't there? Those are the things we need to see from Brian Schottenheimer for me to feel confident in this offense. But that to me is the risk here, the lack of a proven ability to show an adaptability with an offense.
Yeah, you heard him say he wants to be a shifts and motions guy. And why wouldn't we have seen that before? Mina pointed out.
Great question. I mean, he's been on the staff. He's like, I believe in cut splits and distorting the defense. Haven't you been on the staff? So that was a little bit confusing to me. The second thing, when Jerry Jones is talking about this is as big a risk as you could take, you don't get applauded for that. You get applauded for making a good hire. You don't get wins for taking a bigger risk than another organization. I think the overall big question that I have in the whole situation, because I'm not going to talk down on Brian Schottenheimer, I have no idea if he's going to be a good head coach or not. How do you get out of the situation you're in right now?
Yeah.
You got two players that are going to allocate $130 million of cap space. And that doesn't count for trying to re-sign Micah Parsons. So, and everyone, and all you Cowboys fans are going to say, well, they're just going to restructure the contract. Great, you're going to be the Saints. You're going to constantly kick the contract down the line.
And like nobody else does?
Eventually it will catch up to you when the roster isn't good enough.
I would disagree with that. I think they're in much better position than the Saints, Stan. Because, I mean, they're going to restructure Dak's contract for sure. But unlike the Saints, there's not a bunch of other old, aging contracts with declining players. So I do think there's still a lot of CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons are still amongst the two best players of their positions in football. You just need to hit on players, draft picks elsewhere, particularly on the interior of the defensive line and that offensive line.
Yeah, I talked to Joe Witt Jr., who's the defense coordinator of the Commanders, and he did tell me that Brian Schottenheimer is a leader of men. And I think that's one of the more underrated things when it comes to head coaching, understanding how to lead a locker room, how to get people prepared to play, and also how to motivate them to do so. I think in replacing Mike McCarthy, we want to see a difference in the X's and O's, but if he doesn't understand how to delegate, how to organize, how to get people moving and aligned in the same direction, it doesn't matter who's on the roster. It'll be a failure again for the Dallas Cowboys.
Just to that cap hit point, you saw it there, but Prescott's $89.9 million cap hit for 2025, the largest in the NFL. They can restructure it. $17 million, though, higher than the next closest, which is Deshaun Watson.
All right, so there you have it. They got the doom and gloom of everything with the Dallas Cowboys. And you know what? I'm okay with that because, see, they go through. Well, the Cowboys offense hit the wall. They hit the wall. They were the worst last year. Well, they only had Dak for like 5 games. You didn't have Brandon Cooks. You had the worst running game in football. You had 2 rookie offensive linemen. That wasn't play calling, people. That wasn't play calling. It wasn't. Because you had an offense that had more TD passes the year before. Right? So they act like this has been the New York Jets every year. Just kind of saying. We know what Brian Schottenheimer did with Dak Prescott in the offense a season before. We know that. We've seen him lead the league in running the football. We know that. We've seen him having a balanced offense with Seattle. We've seen that. Can you find things that are negative? Yeah. If you look at anything, any car, any person, any company, if you dig and you want to set a narrative, you can find things that are negative. You can find things that are negative. But you can also find things that are positive. And all I know is if they just get the offense to where it was a year before and we get the defense together, you're going to be right back there. So there you have it. We had a lot of injuries. We had a lot of self-inflicted issues because of the Joneses and their ineptitude. These things are fixable if they want to fix them. Do they want to fix them? I don't know. But anyway, I got to get out of here, good people. You know there's going to be lots of news with the Cowboys. This offseason has been cray-cray. Peace.
I can't stand it anymore. I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Stewardess, please let me handle this.
I've got to get out of here.
Calm down now. Get back to your seat. I'll take care of this. Calm down. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Doctor, you're wanted on the phone. Everything's gonna be all right. Please.
Sister, please, I'll handle this.
I've got to get out of here.